Aditya. So it's a very common interview question. They're going to give you scenarios, or they may be asking what are the techniques you use to gather the requirements. So whenever you're gathering requirements, you need to always have the following questions in your mind, like how, where, when, who, what, and why. So how is, in the sense, like what is the functionality that they want? How are they going to use this application? And how could this particular application satisfy the need of this business? Let's take an example. So if you have a client coming to you and asking for a mobile application, now you may be asking, you need, as a business analyst, you wants to know, okay, how the end user wants to use this particular functionality and how we can satisfy the need for this particular business users. So always you have to keep in mind all these how questions. Next one is where. Where is this process taking off? Where would this feature get to the user? So when we say like exactly how the user will be using it, where it is taking off, whether it's a mobile application, the user has to go to app store and download the application, or it's going to be a web application where you'll provide the link and the end user has to click the link and open the web application. However, like how is this process going to take off? How is this, the whole application is going to get started? So, and also how would this feature get to the user? So there are, like for today, for example, there are multiple ways a application can be downloaded or it can be accessed through different means, right? So where would this feature get to the user? So that is the where question. And then we have when question. When will they use this feature? Okay, so when, if they're going to log in, or if they're going to register, or they're going to access the database, or they're going to submit some claims, or it depends upon the application. When is this particular feature an end user will use it? Okay, so and when they use the particular application, how are you going to know it? For example, what is the prime time this application will be used? So let's say there is a web application for a hospital, and there are so many users accessing the web application. They're submitting their claims, they're accessing the patient information, the doctor is prescribing drugs. There are so much is happening in that web portal. So, what is a prime time that most of this activity will happen, whether it is weekend or weekdays, or if there is any particular timing from 8 to 5 or 9 to 6? So, what's the time that this, the most of the features in this application will be used? So, you need to know when. Depending upon that, you can actually increase the capacity or the performance of that particular application too. And you will know when there'll be a downtime and why there are so many bugs, or why there are so many performance issues during that particular time. The next is who. So who is going to use that feature, whether it's going to be an internal application or external application, whether that is used only by certain number of people, or it will be used by a larger group, whether the access has to be limited. So for example, there is a web portal application. Okay, for the hospital, not everybody will have access to the same information. The nurse will have access only to their department, doctors will have access only to their department, and patients can see only their claims and information regarding their medical diagnosis or everything, right? So we, even though it's one common application, one web portal, we are always deciding like who has to see which features. Okay, that we have to control the access and limit the number of information that a particular user can see. So if it's going to be admin logging in, then they can view different information. Whether if it's going to be one single user, then they can view only like certain number of information. So depending upon whether they are admins, or they are database administrators, or they are end users, or developers, depending upon the access level, you can control the information how much they can see. So that is who is be using that particular feature, who will be having the features outputs. And um, what do I know of that particular feature, whether I should have any assumptions, or what needs to be done with that feature. So if let's say you have a hospital application, and then you are having a login feature for the doctors. Okay, so there are three login features: one for the doctor, one for the patient, and one for nurses. Okay, so there are three login features. So what do I know of that feature? So the feature can be different for different people. For doctor, they have to maybe give um, their account ID, or they have to give their employee ID, whatever, and they have to log in. For nurses too, okay, their access level will be different and their login will be different. Whereas for the patient, it could be using my email ID, or it could be using username and ID. So the login information can be different for different people. Or if they're going to have these same login features, for example, everybody has to log in using their user ID and password. How are we going to do, and what kind of assumptions that we are going to have that for that particular feature? However, the business users wants us to develop that particular login functionality, we have to like understand or assume accordingly. Okay, so whatever assumptions you are having, you have to make sure that that is fine with the business users. And what needs to be done with that feature? Okay, so for example, you have a registration uh, page, then uh, how that feature can be used by different people. Okay, so whether minors can do registration, or if it's only by an adult. And for children, can we have a separate login, or if it's going to be a separate link? Or can parents access children's information? For example, if they are below 18, and children, there are some certain sensitive diagnoses that a parent should not see. Okay, so in US we have like sensitive diagnosis. So a minor below 18 can go for a doctor checkup, but they don't want the parent to know that they have certain diagnosis. um, the parent will not be told. Okay, for those diagnoses, they'll not be informed. Okay, so certain login features, a parent will have access and they can view the diagnosis, but for certain sensitive diagnosis, parent will not have the ability to view that diagnosis. It will be very personal only to the patient. Okay, so we have to make sure whenever you're developing any kind of application for hospital or claims related, or anything like very sensitive application, we have to make sure that who will be accessing that feature, and what needs to be done with that feature. And the last one is why question. Is there any other way we can develop this application? Easy way that this can be done? Does this function satisfy the company's needs? And solve the question, is happy with our product, right? So how can that be done? So these are the six questions that you have to ask: how, where, when, who, what, and why. And the next question is, what are the elicitation techniques that you have used in the past? So there are so many techniques, but I have listed the top 7 techniques. First is interview. Interview in the sense you are actually calling the stakeholder, the essential stakeholder, and you are actually throwing them on certain standard questions, and you're getting the answers. That is interview. Or it can be group interview too. You are like calling like 3 to 4 essential stakeholders, and then you are having certain set of predefined questions, and you're asking. So these questions are not very like random. You have already like defined these questions in a well documented way, and then you are asking them. Okay, so that is interview. Next is document analysis. So document analysis is like you are already going through the existing documents that you have, and you are taking notes of the existing documents. Or if it's going to be a brand new project, then you are um, asking your senior BAs, or people from other teams, that is there any reference you have, any documents or existing notices that you have for this particular project, and you're doing analysis. Third one is brainstorming. Brainstorming is you're calling a few people and asking, like, this is like random. So you're asking their everybody's opinions and their ideas, and finally you're solutioning. Okay, so brainstorming is different from interviews. Interviews, you know the questions and you are asking them the certain questions, but in brainstorming it's not like that. This is brainstorming is allowing you the people to talk whatever they have in mind, and then you are solutioning at the end of the call. Okay, that is brainstorming. The next one is survey. Survey in the sense you are already defining what are the questions you're going to have, and you're going to give it to large number of people, and then you're going to get their feedback. And prototyping is like nothing but a miniature, creating a miniature or a demo of that particular product even before the product gets done. So, for example, you are developing a software, a miniature of that application, and then you're actually observing them, like what are they doing, and how they're using the application. And or you can observe the senior BAs too, how they are navigating this particular application, how they are using the existing application, and you are gathering requirements. Or this mostly observation is for enhancing the existing project. And the seventh one is workshops. So workshop in the sense it's like having a group of people and having some specific topic, and you are talking about that specific topic and gathering requirements. That is workshop. Group of people. So you can always say that, yes, I have used surveys to gather requirements from large group of people. So when we say surveys, it is with specific questions, and so it can be through paper, or you can send a survey link, or you can create a Google form and share it with the stakeholders and get the feedback. So usually, like when you are required to gather requirements from large group of people, it is better to send through a survey link, okay, so that it's very easy for the people to navigate and submit the feedback. So you can compile the results, and you can actually gather the requirements. So the fourth question is, how can you make sure that whatever you gathered is accurate and complete? So, whenever you're gathering requirements, in order to make sure that it is accurate and it's complete, you have to make sure that, first of all, you need to have a clear and concise understanding of the requirements. So, as a BA, you have to be very clear on the project scope and what you're trying to achieve, and what is in scope and out of scope. Okay, if you are not having a very clear understanding, then you can always go back to the stakeholders, make sure like whatever doubts that you have, it's cleared, and you need to be very, very clear on the requirements, what we are trying to achieve. Okay. And if you have any technical problems, or if you have been during solutioning, you have any doubts, you can always like consult with the subject matter experts to get a better understanding of the problem domain. So we can't be 100% accurate all the time, right? So you have to consult with the subject matter experts. It could be architects or developers or testers, anybody within your team or external team, however you're trying to get help. It's better you get the help and understand the problem. And always go whenever you're gathering requirements, right, you have to make sure that you're using this elicitation techniques. So it can be interviews, focus groups, or workshops. So don't just schedule the call and then call a bunch of people and then you don't know what to ask them. It's very, very unprofessional, and people are not going to attend your calls if you are you're wasting their time. So you have to be very professional, and whatever questions that you're going to ask them, right, you need to have thorough knowledge on whatever questions that you're asking, and how to document it, and what kind of technique that you're going to use, whether you're going to go for workshops, you're going to go for focus groups, or you're going to go for interviews, or if it's going to be just surveys. So whatever technique that you're going to use, you need to be well prepared of that particular technique. And you have to, before you schedule any call or you invite the stakeholders, you need to be very well aware of that particular technique. And once you get the requirements from the stakeholders, make sure you thoroughly understand it, ask them to read it properly, and ask them to provide the sign off. So you have to always get a sign off when you get the requirements, when you document the requirements. Make sure you get the sign off from the essential stakeholders stating that all the requirements are accurate and complete. This is how you make sure that whatever requirements that you are getting are accurate and complete. Fifth question is, what are the common mistakes that happen during requirements gathering? So the common mistakes are, first of all, not inviting the right people. Okay, so not involving enough stakeholders in the process. That is the most common mistake. You invite one or two people and they don't know about the domain or the data flow. So that is where the problem starts. So not involving the right stakeholders is the very first problem. And also overlooking and undervaluing the importance of requirement gathering. People think that every project is the same. Every application is going to have the same data flow. So that is you will be amazed how every requirement is going to be different, how every application is going to be very unique, and every project is going to be a different journey for you. So do not overlook or undervalue your requirement gathering sessions. And third one is not taking the time to understand the problem. So you know that this particular project, like stakeholders are not, they themselves don't know what's the data flow, they themselves don't know how to begin this process, how the end user wants it, they themselves don't know. So in that case, you have to understand exactly what is the problem that these essential stakeholders are facing, and how you have opportunity to fix that problem. Okay. And fourth one is, this is very very important, not documenting the scope of the project. Okay, so as a BA, you have to like document everything. If you don't have enough documentation skills, or you don't know how to document, and you don't know to write down the scope of the project, then you are in trouble, because tomorrow that document will speak, and nobody is going to everything. If there is any problem, you need to have proof. Okay, so for that, documentation is very 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 important. Next is trying to gather too much information. So you're calling a lot of people, 50, 60 people in a call, and everybody's opinion you're getting, and you don't know where to go, lead from there. And there are multiple teams that needs to be involved in this project, and everybody is having dependency on the other application. And you are getting too much information too soon in the very first or second call. That is also a problem. You take one step at a time, and then be clear on during the requirement gathering sessions. And sixth one is not maintaining a distance between high level and detailed. Um, I mean, Sixth one is not maintaining a balance between high level and detailed information. So you need to understand what are the, from a business perspective, you need to understand like what are the high level information, and from a developer or a tester perspective, you need to understand what are the detailed information. So you need to try to maintain a balance between the high level requirements and detailed information. Also, not validating the requirements with the stakeholders. As I discussed earlier, you always need to validate the requirements with the stakeholders and get the sign off from the stakeholders. Can we avoid these mistakes? So whenever you are gathering requirements and you are making mistakes, how can we avoid those mistakes? So first is, you have to define the scope very well, and you need to get the sign off from all the stakeholders. So when you start creating any user stories or use cases, you need to be very very clear of the requirements. That's the first thing you have to do. As a BA, you have to first have a clear understanding of the scope of the project. Also, when you create user stories or use cases for those requirements, you have to clearly define the requirements. And the third one is, you always have to like document in a professional way. So you can always use requirement management tool like Jira, like Confluence. There are so many requirement management tools. So use one of these tools, and you need to capture all the requirements, track all the requirements, and manage all the requirements. Don't miss any requirements, any particular feature, don't miss it. So you will be like, when you start your career, it would be easy for you to track all the requirements, but over the period of like 1 or 2 years, if you're working with the same team, you would have gathered a lot of requirements and features. So it's better that you have an application to track all these tools. Usually, like in very very big companies, they provide you these management tools like Jira and Confluence. They give you access. So I would recommend you to create the requirements using this tool instead of Word and Excel, because it is always there and it's forever, and everybody will have access to it. So please use the requirement management tools. Next is you have to regularly review the requirements with the stakeholders. So don't have gather the requirements and then don't be like don't forget them. You have to regularly review the requirements with the stakeholders, make sure they are valid and nothing has changed, because some projects may take about 6 months or 8 months. So in that case, we have to make sure the initial requirements are still valid and nothing has changed. This is how we avoid the mistakes during requirement gathering. And question is, name some of the tools that is used for elicitation. So the first one is data flow maps, and then you have mind maps, and then you have user stories, use case diagrams, as is and to be diagrams, and also you have different applications called Jira and Confluence. Um, I will make specific videos in future in module 3 and 4. I will be showing about how to create data flow diagrams, how to create mind maps and all that. But I have also done videos on user stories and ASIS and to be diagrams. So you can like go to my YouTube channel and you can search for these videos. There are very specific videos on how to create user stories and ASIS and to be diagrams. Um, so you need to like document all the requirements using these flow diagrams and mind maps. And also if it is agile, then you create user stories. If it's waterfall methodology, then you create these use case diagrams. And you can always document all your requirements in applications called Jira and Confluence. So these are some of the tools that you need to know. The next question is how to perform document analysis. So whenever you're going to a project, if it's a new project or existing project, it can be anything. How do you perform document analysis? So you have to like review all the existing BRDs, handbooks, or it can be any journals, or it can be any Confluence pages, or any training materials. If it's going to be any government based project, then you'll be having any kind of um, government policies and procedures information. All those documentations will be there. So you have to list, first of all, you have to list all your resources, and then you have to decide on how to organize the information. So write down all the resources that you actually have, and then you need to organize the information, and then you have to like make a copy for yourself. You can have it a Word document, you can have a Confluence page, whatever like is easy for you to create copies. You can always have copies, and then you need to have all the existing information, whatever is there, right? You need to organize those information, have a folder for yourself, and then you have to make sure that these are the right information. Do not use very old information. For example, there is a new policy procedure from last month. You have to use the updated information, don't for the old policy and procedure. Okay, so what was the latest version, what is the updated document that you have to use. You have to ensure there is authenticity in your document, in reviewing those documents. And then you have to ask questions about like whether these are the right information, how do I organize this. Anybody who's reading your document should be understanding whatever you're documenting, right? So you need to actually decide on how to organize. That is a very important skill. You can have multiple documents, but from that, how to gather information from multiple documents and have a like a journal for yourself, a copy for yourself. So that's a skill that you need to develop. And next question is, what are the challenges that a business analyst might face during elicitation? So challenges in the sense like, first is stakeholders may give their opinions and they may not know exactly what's going on in the project. They may be new, or sometimes they're not technically aware of how it will be in the back end. And so you need to make sure that you are involving all the stakeholders. So that's one thing. So don't just go with one or two people. Make sure that you're involving all the stakeholders. And you have to, if they're having conflicts between themselves, so if there one person is saying a requirement, another person is not agreeing with them, we need to be very patient in handling those situations. And you need to identify like which is the correct requirement. Okay, so that is a skill that a business analyst should develop. And when you are processing large amounts of data, when there are like so much data given to you and you don't know what to do, you need to like um, analyze and organize those large amount of data. That's why a problem like a business analyst may have is going to be a huge project and integration with multiple systems. You don't know how every system is going to interact with another system. So that time you may face any issue. And constantly if they're changing requirements. This is a very common problem that a business analyst will face. Okay, they are giving you requirements, after a month they want to change the requirements and they don't follow up with you too. And after 3 months they're changing the requirements again. So these are some of the challenges that a business analyst may face. So how can we follow some best practices in during requirement gathering sessions? So first is like um, documenting everything in a clear way in a spreadsheet or any requirement management tool. That is very important. Next is prioritizing the requirements. So based upon the business need, which is the feature that first we are going to develop and test. So prioritizing requirements. So prioritizing requirements is very important. First, so after documenting, after getting sign off, you have to prioritize the requirements. Make sure your developers understand the business needs and which feature needs to be developed first. Okay, so that is very important. You have to give that information to the developers, and then once the all the requirements are done and set, you have to get the final sign off before the development is started. And do not start the project without the sign off, because if they're continuously changing the requirements, then you can actually show the document. You can say you can show the BRDs, you can show the user stories. You can always say that this is what was documented, that is what we are doing. What are you telling has not been documented, so we cannot proceed that new feature. So document all the requirements, and you need to prioritize all the requirements and get the sign off from the stakeholders. These are very, very, very important.